Today we're making vegan Swedish meatballs. Are you guys ready for this? To start making our vegan Swedish meatballs, we're going to start with some meat, specifically half a pound of Impossible meat. You can totally use Beyond Meat for this. I just find that it becomes a lot tougher of a meatball texture, so we're gonna stick with Impossible meat today. Next, we've got a tablespoon of minced onion. You can also grate this. Then a teaspoon of minced garlic and a big heaping teaspoon of fresh parsley because it really helps to lighten up this otherwise heavy dish. If you don't have fresh parsley, go ahead and use dried. After that, we've got a heaping tablespoon of breadcrumbs, and then a pinch of salt, and a pinch of pepper. The magic is in these next two items, which is ground nutmeg and allspice. That's what's really going to give Swedish meatballs its Swedish meatballs flavor. So what you want to add is, this can vary depending on how intense you want these flavors to be. So by all means, experiment with less first, give it a sniff and see if that's going to be okay for you. Otherwise, I'm going to be pretty heavy-handed. So we've got a quarter to really a half of a teaspoon of nutmeg, and then the same amount for allspice. And now we're going to mix it all together and shape our meatballs. These are our meatballs. So with a half a pound of Impossible meat, I was able to make 11 meatballs. Could have obviously stretched it to an even dozen, but yeah, that's a really good portion size. So if you really need to up it and make a full batch, you can obviously just double this recipe, but this is good enough to like easily feed 2 people. So now let's go do our sauce. The base of our sauce is going to come from all the yumminess we're going to get from our meatballs. So we're going to pan fry them until just barely cooked, because they will finish cooking in the sauce. Your meatballs are pretty much browned on all sides, we can go ahead and remove them and set them aside. And we're going to leave all this good fat in the pan. Now to our hot skillet, we're going to add 2 heaping tablespoons of butter. And let that get all nice and melty. When your butter is all melted and starts to kind of sizzle, that's when we can go and add our flour. So I've added about a tablespoon of flour right now. You can whisk this or just stir this in. And then because it's still not super duper thick, I'm going to add another half tablespoon and stir that in. And I think I'm going to make it an even 2 tablespoons. And again, the amount of flour you put in really does depend how loose or thick you're going to want your end result to be. I like to have it kind of be a mixture. Like, I obviously want it to be runny, but I still want it to be thicker. You know, we're kind of going for gravy consistency. So yeah. Now we're going to let that cook out some of that flour taste. And then we're going to add broth. Now we can turn the heat up. Give this another stir. And then what we want to do is add our beef broth. Now, if you have the vegan no beef broth bouillon, you can use that. I don't have that, so what I do is I make a mixture of the Better Than Bouillon no chicken base and the Better Than Bouillon vegetable base. So I do a combo of chicken and veggie stock to get that more unctuous flavor. And then we're also going to end up adding a little bit of vegan Worcestershire sauce to it to give it more of that beefy flavor. But okay, so we brought this up to temp, and now we can get this in. And that was a cup of stock to start. We can always add more. We can't take it out. So we're just gonna incorporate that. And this is where you have to be patient, you know. Get it up to a slow simmer, you know, keep that heat on and let it thicken. So before we do anything else, we want to let this thicken. After about like 5-ish minutes, you will get this nice glossy soup. You might still see some, if you didn't use a whisk like I didn't, you might still see some like flour clumps. They'll eventually break down, just keep stirring. But otherwise you're gonna get this nice thick sauce that parts when you put your spoon through it. So at this consistency, I mean, if you want it to be thicker, you can certainly keep letting this go, and you can even sprinkle in a little more flour and just keep whisking or stirring. But at this point, your broth should be pretty concentrated. This is kind of its concentrated form, and it should taste also pretty salty to you, which is why we hadn't yet added the vegan Worcestershire. So we're going to first add milk. I am going to put in about half a cup of oat milk. And again, let that come to temperature, thicken up a bit. You can test it right now before adding the vegan Worcestershire to see the salt level. If it's too salty, you can add some more milk or water to thin it out. And actually, I think I'm going to want my meatballs to be pretty saucy, so I'm also going to add another bit of milk. But yeah, so just a little bit over of a half a cup of milk to a cup of the broth. Oh, delicious. Again, you usually want the broth to be pretty flavorful. I hate when Swedish meatball broth is kind of just like sticky glue, because especially since Swedish meatballs are usually served over noodles or like traditionally egg noodles, which aren't vegan, and mashed potatoes. I really like it also over polenta. Those are things that are all pretty bland and can stand up to the salt. So yeah, so we're gonna let our nice smooth sauce come to temp again. And then we're going to add the final touches. So our gravy has come to a little bit of a simmer. So I'm going to add just a couple splashes of vegan Worcestershire. Not a lot. It's really powerful stuff and is also pretty salty. So we want to start with less. We can always add more. You can always add more to taste if it's not enough for you. But again, this sauce is going to impart some of its flavor on the meatballs since we're going to finish the cooking the meatballs in here. So you really don't want it to just be a pile of nothing. That is so good. What I'm also going to do now is add some of the Trader Joe's umami seasoning because it helps give that earthy flavor. And then to really drive it home, because I really want this to be like the most flavorful gravy, I'm going to add in more nutmeg and more allspice. Not a ton. As you can see, you can start with less, add more. I probably did like a 1/4 teaspoon of each this time. Those flavors are just what makes it so distinctly Swedish meatballs to me, that I really like adding them to my gravy as well. So what you want to do is kind of heat this back up, bring it back up to another soft boil, let it thicken again, and then taste from there. Decide if you need to add more milk again, kind of go through that process until you get the consistency and amount of gravy that you want. And then at that point, we can re-add our meatballs and finish this up. For joining me today. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, and while you're at it, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell next to it so you're notified when new videos go up, and I will see you all next time. Bye.